time to take a look at another horrible case with you. Heidi Firkus, a beloved member of her small Minnesota community, had her life tragically cut short on April 25, 2010, in a brutal murder that left everyone stunned. Who was the culprit? Her own husband. Over a decade later, her husband Nick Firkus got arrested and convicted for her senseless killing, shattering the trust of all who knew them. As the trial progressed, the community was completely surprised by the shocking truths that came out and the discovery of a complicated set of lies that had been kept secret for a long time. In the small town of St. Paul, Minnesota, where everyone knew each other's names, a brutal crime shook the community to its core. Heidi Firkus, a bright young soul, had her life brutally taken from her in a senseless act of violence. The mystery surrounding her tragic end on April 25, 2010, has haunted investigators for many years, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a community searching for justice. As the case went cold for many years, Heidi's family and friends struggled with not knowing what happened, feeling even more sadness and pain. After decades of searching, the investigators finally uncovered the culprit, bringing closure to a long-standing mystery that had haunted the community for years. However, in the midst of finding closure, a significant question remained unanswered. What drove the perpetrator to commit the terrible act that ended Heidi's life? Born on December 14, 1984, Heidi Marie Firkus, the youngest of John and Linda Erickson's 3 children and their only daughter, lived her life to the fullest. Known for her playful and artistic nature, she graduated from high school in 2003 and continued her education at the University of Northwestern in Roseville. Alongside her studies, she was a regular attendee at Calvary Church in the city, a place she had been a part of since her early years. It was at this church where she met Nicholas Firkus, also known as Nick, and together they took on the role of youth group leaders, serving their community with dedication and passion. Nicholas Firkus was born on February 25, 1983, to Julie and Steve Firkus. Nick, a driven and ambitious young man, dedicated his days to his work as the director of operations at a reputable carpet cleaning company. Known for his well-rounded personality and strong work ethic, he had found his true match in Heidi, a woman he had met at their shared place of worship, Calvary Church. In the year 2005, at the tender ages of 22 and 20 respectively, Nikki and Heidi made the joyous decision to take their relationship to the next level. Surrounded by their loved ones and the familiar walls of the church that had witnessed the blossoming of their love, they exchanged vows that sealed their commitment to one another. Nick and Heidi's marriage seemed flawless to those around them. The couple shared a passion for travel and biking, enjoying these activities together. They were active members of their church community and took pleasure in hosting dinner parties for their friends and loved ones. Heidi had recently begun working in an administrative role at a financial services firm where her father was employed. Nick and Heidi's relationship appeared strong and promising, with their bond growing even stronger over time. But no one knew behind the closed doors of their home, a different story unfolded. Heidi didn't know that her life was about to take a darker turn. On a fateful morning of April 25, 2010, Heidi called 911 from her home in St. Paul, Minnesota, saying someone had broken in. Only 38 seconds into the call, Heidi was giving her address when she suddenly yelled "no" and a gunshot was heard. 65 seconds after the initial gunshot, Nick Firkus used Heidi's phone to contact the dispatcher. This is what he said. "Please, someone just broke into my house and shot me and my wife." While on the phone, Nick cried uncontrollably and repeatedly said, "Oh my Heidi," and "my wife is dead. Please get here." He also shouted, "No." When the police arrived at the scene, they found Heidi unresponsive in the kitchen with a gunshot wound at the back. While Nick was beside her on the floor, still talking to the 911 dispatcher, he was very upset and had been shot in the upper left leg. He told the police that 1 or 2 people had broken into their home. He grabbed his shotgun and tried to escape with his wife through the back door. As they ran towards the detached garage, the intruder managed to take the shotgun from him and then shot both Nick and Heidi. Tragically, Heidi was declared deceased at the scene, her life cut short by the events that unfolded. Meanwhile, Nick was quickly transported to the hospital for treatment and was questioned in the hospital by the police. Police asked Nick why he and Heidi left their bedroom, which was safer, to face the possible danger. He said they were just trying to get out of the house through the back door. Soon, Nick's wounds were treated in the hospital, and he was released in just 3 hours. Later, he was again interviewed in the police station about the incident. At the police station, Nick talked about what happened in detail. He said he remembers watching a movie with Heidi and having wine before going to bed around midnight. Nick said he woke up around 6:10 to 6:15 a.m. when he heard the screen door open and someone messing with the doorknob. The investigators questioned Nick about locking the deadbolt. He admitted that he and Heidi usually made sure to lock it, but he believed he had forgotten to do so that particular night. That night, after hearing the noises, Nick said he took his shotgun from the upstairs closet. He explained that he had brought it up from the basement a month ago because he noticed it was starting to rust. Nick mentioned that the shotgun was empty, but he loaded it when he heard the noises. After that, he woke up Heidi, asked her to call 911, and instructed her to leave the house and go to the garage where their cars were parked. He also shared that he and Heidi had a safety plan. If they ever faced trouble, they agreed to go to the garage where their cars were parked. Nick, who is right-handed, was holding a pair of jeans in his right hand and the shotgun in his left hand as he walked behind Heidi, guiding her toward the garage. Nick recounted that he and Heidi paused next to the front door to get her wallet from the table. It was at this moment he said that the door suddenly burst open. A tall, dark-skinned man, approximately 6 feet 1 inch tall and weighing between 200 to 220 pounds, came rushing in. He said the intruder was wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled tightly around his face. Nick explained that he dropped the jeans, and the intruder seized the barrel of the shotgun. The 2 men then engaged in a physical struggle. During the altercation, the gun was shot. He said, "My finger accidentally slipped onto the trigger. She was running away, so I must have hit her in the back." Nick recounted that the shot struck Heidi, causing her to collapse immediately. He and the suspect continued fighting over the shotgun until it fired a second time. He stated that the second shot hit him in the upper thigh, causing him to fall to the ground. At that point, the intruder fled out the front door. He also told investigators that Heidi was unresponsive, and then he also lost his senses. Later, he also told police that their house was scheduled to be foreclosed on the very next day, and they had planned to inform their parents and friends about their situation that same day. Nick explained that he and Heidi had fallen behind on their bills, and their house had been foreclosed on and purchased by someone else. They were required to vacate the premises, but they had not shared this information with any of their friends or family. He mentioned that their plan was to pack up their house on Sunday and Monday morning, leaving some of their belongings in the garage to collect later. They intended to find someone to stay with for a while, but fate had something else for them. So, the once peaceful home was left with an air of tragedy, and the lives of Nick and Heidi were forever changed by the devastating events of that fateful morning. The investigation continued. Law enforcement secured the area and interviewed residents. None of the neighbors reported seeing anyone leaving the Firkus residence. One neighbor, Brendan O'Connor, who was looking after kittens in a nearby house, informed the authorities that he heard an argument, followed by gunfire and a plea. "You shot her. You shot me. Please, please, no." Although no one witnessed the intruder leaving. After several weeks, Nick proceeded to give the police a sketch of the suspect, which was then shared with the public. Whose sketch was that? After speaking with the police, they released the description that Nick gave of the suspected intruder: a male, race unknown, between 6 feet to 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighing 200 to 220 pounds, wearing a dark, hooded sweatshirt. About 3 weeks later, the police showed a sketch made by an artist hired by Nick's lawyer based on the initial description. In this updated account, Nick specified that the individual was African American and estimated to be between 40 to 60 years of age. During the investigation, the search initially focused on finding an unidentified African American male intruder based on Nick's description. The authorities searched the area thoroughly, hoping to find any evidence or witnesses supporting Nick's story. The investigation into Heidi's death did not lead to any arrests or charges, leaving the case unresolved for many years. After many years, something shocking was revealed. Over 10 years passed with no resolution in Heidi's murder case. Nick seemed to have moved on, marrying Rachel and starting a family. Yet financial troubles resurfaced, leading to suspicions from Rachel about undisclosed problems. Rachel's concerns about their financial situation and Nick's reluctance to discuss it sparked her curiosity. She began to dig deeper, uncovering secrets and inconsistencies in Nick's past. Her discoveries would ultimately lead her to question everything she thought she knew about her husband and his involvement in Heidi's tragic death. Rachel didn't know about the financial problems the couple was facing, similar to what Heidi and Nick went through years ago. Her worries made her call the authorities, which reignited interest in the case. Investigators then investigated Nick's second wife, Rachel Firkus, whom he wed in 2012. When Rachel talked to the authorities, she had already divorced Nick due to his increasing financial problems. Rachel had also recorded their conversation where she confronted Nick about his deceit before their divorce in 2019. She even told investigators he was definitely repeating the same things he did with Heidi with me. I saw a letter that we had not paid our property taxes, and if we didn't pay them, we were going to get evicted by 2020. When Rachel contacted the police with her suspicions, it set in motion a chain of events that would once again thrust the Heidi Firkus murder case into the spotlight. Sergeant Nicole Sipes, who had been assigned to the case, listened intently to Rachel's concerns and began to re-examine the evidence. Sergeant Nicole Sipes of the St. Paul Police Department became deeply invested in uncovering the truth behind Heidi's murder. She made the bold move of enlisting the help of the FBI to analyze the audio recordings from the 911 call, hoping to find clues that could shed light on what happened that fateful night. After carefully examining the audio, the FBI found no proof that a third person was present during the incident. This was surprising, as it contradicted what Heidi's husband had told the police earlier. Sergeant Sipes and her team were confused by this new information. If only Heidi and her husband were in the house, then what exactly happened between them that led to her death? The lack of a third person made them even more suspicious of the husband's possible involvement in the crime. Determined to uncover the truth, the investigation continued with more intensity. The FBI's findings had opened up a new path to follow, and Sergeant Sipes was more committed than ever to bringing justice for Heidi and providing answers to her grieving family. The investigators also obtained financial documents that contradicted the statements Nicholas Firkus had previously made. These records led them to suspect him more strongly in Heidi's murder. Nick's story about what happened kept changing. At first, he said he got his gun, but the intruder took it from him and shot both him and Heidi. Later, he said the intruder didn't take the gun, but his own finger accidentally pulled the trigger, hitting Heidi in the back. Despite thorough investigation, there was a notable absence of any signs of a struggle, such as overturned furniture or marks on the walls. The forensic analysis of the scene contradicted Nick's account of the events, particularly regarding the trajectory of the shot that struck Heidi. Additionally, Heidi's 911 call did not mention seeing an intruder. The lack of evidence of a break-in or intruder at the crime scene also raised the investigators' suspicions. They believed this absence of clues was part of Nick's plan to cover up his involvement in Heidi's death. So, soon the arrest warrant was made for Nick Firkus. On May 19, 2021, over a decade after Heidi's death, a SWAT team closed in on Nick Firkus's home in Mounds View and arrested him. He was arrested due to Rachel's suspicions and the dedicated work of Police Sergeant Nicole Sipes. This sudden arrest surprised many who had thought the case had reached a standstill and would never see closure. As the legal process unfolded, the details of the case would be re-examined and the truth behind that fateful night would slowly come to light. The question on everyone's mind was, would Nick be held accountable for Heidi's tragic death? Soon after, Heidi's family released a statement in response to Nicholas's arrest. "We're extremely grateful for all those who have worked so hard and long to get the case to this point, and also for everyone who has prayed and stood beside us all these years. We are hopeful that these charges will finally bring out the truth and result in justice for Heidi. Even though we know we can't have her back, we believe Heidi would want us to have the truth. God is honored by truth. Heidi's life and memory is further honored by truth." The family's words conveyed a mix of relief, gratitude, and a steadfast determination to uncover the truth. They acknowledged the tireless efforts of those who had never given up on the case and the unwavering support of the community. Their statement also expressed hope that the charges against Nick would lead to a resolution that would honor Heidi's memory and bring justice to her tragic death. When the case went to trial, Nick Firkus maintained his innocence and entered a plea of not guilty. Additionally, the majority of his family, particularly his father, expressed their belief in his innocence. They asserted that Nick's deep love for Heidi would have prevented him from carrying out such a violent act, but the jury thought otherwise. On February 10, 2023, the unthinkable happened. Nick, the person Heidi trusted most, was convicted of her brutal murder. After agonizing over the evidence for 10 long hours, the jury delivered their verdict, leaving all who knew Heidi reeling in shock and disbelief. In the trial, the prosecution carefully presented a timeline showing a man overwhelmed by serious financial difficulties. They argued that Nick had hidden the full extent of their financial problems from Heidi and, fearing shame and conflict, resorted to ending her life. Additionally, the prosecution cast doubt on his story of a home invasion, suggesting it might have been a cover-up to deflect attention from himself. The prosecution presented compelling evidence during the trial, including the lack of signs of forced entry and inconsistencies in Nick's account. Perhaps the most persuasive piece of evidence was the conspicuous absence of DNA or physical proof indicating the presence of a third party, specifically the alleged intruder. This absence of evidence casts serious doubt on the validity of Nick's story. During the trial, prosecutor Rachel Craker stated that Nick Firkus was unwilling to face the truth of his deception, leading him to commit a shocking act. He said, "He took Heidi's life and saved his reputation." But in Nick's defense, attorney Robert Richmond contended that the transition from financial distress to murder was illogical. He even said, "All of this psychobabble that killing his wife would somehow save his reputation makes no sense." After heated discussions in the trial, the moment of truth arrived as the jury deliberated over Nick's fate. The weight of the evidence, the emotional testimonies, and the legal arguments all culminated in a pivotal decision that would determine whether justice would be served for Heidi's tragic death. So, after extensive court proceedings and careful consideration of the evidence, the jury unanimously decided that Nick Firkus was guilty of first-degree murder. On April 13, 2023, the judge handed down the harshest possible sentence. Nick would spend a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Despite being found guilty in a court of law, Nicholas Firkus continues to assert that he had no involvement in his wife Heidi's tragic demise. He firmly stands by his claim of innocence, even after being sentenced for the crime. On the day of his sentencing, Nick said, "I recognize the pain and loss shared by everyone here today. Justice had been served, but at what cost? A family shattered, a community betrayed, and a life taken far too soon. The finality of it all was almost too much to bear." The verdict brought a sense of closure to Heidi's family and friends, but it also left them with the painful realization that the man they thought they knew was capable of such a heinous act. So you must be thinking, where is Nick now? Nick is currently serving his life sentence at the Minnesota Correctional Facility, located in St. Cloud, Minnesota. In the end, let me tell you what was the motive behind the killing. The main motive behind the killing remains unclear, leaving questions about what drove Nick to commit such a tragic act. However, the investigation revealed that in June 2009, Nick had been served with foreclosure papers on their house. The house was then sold at a sheriff's auction that same month, about 10 months before Heidi was killed. Eviction proceedings had started in February 2010, and hearing was scheduled for March 8, 2010, which Nicholas attended alone. The original lockout date was set for April 9, 2010. Nick called the attorneys and said his grandmother was in the hospital and about to die. He asked to have the lockout moved to April 26th. However, when investigators looked into this, they found no evidence that either of Nick's grandmothers was actually in hospital or died in 2010. So, when questioned by investigators whether Heidi knew about all this or not, Nick claimed that Heidi was fully aware of their dire financial circumstances. He went on to say that they had made plans together to move out of their foreclosed home and start a new life somewhere else. But things were not as they seemed. The shocking truth came to light by the prosecutors. He had hidden their financial struggles from his wife and tragically ended her life before she could ever learn the harsh reality. Rather than being honest with his wife and working together to find a solution, Nick resorted to the unthinkable. Prosecutors said Nick killed his wife because he was too ashamed to tell her about their money problems. This included $18,000 in credit card debt and 22 months of late mortgage payments. Prosecutors argued that he killed Heidi because he was too ashamed and afraid to face the reality of their situation. By ending her life, he saved himself from having to confront the consequences of his own deception. Yet, even as justice was served, the pain and loss felt by Heidi's loved ones remained. No amount of legal retribution could undo the harm done or bring back the vibrant life that was so cruelly taken. No one could have imagined that the person Heidi trusted most would be the one to take her life, but that is exactly what happened in her tragic case.